Welcome back to Inside Personal Growth. This is Greg Voisen, the host of Inside Personal Growth. And I have a HarperCollins book and a new author on with me today from Oklahoma City. And his name is Clifford Hudson. And the book is Master of None, How a Jack of All Trades Can Still Reach the Top. Good day to you, Cliff.
Good morning, Greg. How are you doing?
Good, good. It's a pleasure having you on, and I think I should let my listeners know that Cliff was also the former CEO of Sonic Corporation. For all of my listeners, if you want to learn more about Cliff, just go to cliffordhudson.com. That's HUDSON.com. There you can download a free chapter of the book. You can also look at Cliff's rules. It's actually a really cool website. He even has Discover Cliff's Journey there. So you can go all the way back and look at his history, which I thought is really fascinating. I think for most authors to kind of see how they evolved in their life. Cliff obviously is a very accomplished individual. You don't get to be the CEO of Sonic Corporation, but I'm going to let our listeners know a tad bit about you. He is the former general counsel, president, chief executive officer, and chairman of Oklahoma City-based Sonic Corporation. And for those of you who don't know what Sonic is, that's that great drive-through hamburger joint. I'm just going to call it that, but it is if you've never had a burger there, just go look at the commercials. They got those two guys in the front seat of the car. Lifelong student of experiences fueled by unending curiosity. He writes about curiosity in his book too, and we're going to get into that. He's also served as a number of roles, most notably as Jack of all trades. And that's what this book is about. In the Clinton administration, he served as chairman of the board for the Securities Investor Protection Corporation. Cliff also serves as a trustee of the Ford Foundation and is a past chairman of the board of the National Trust for Historic Preservation. This is his first book. I don't know if it's going to be his last, but it is his first book. And he challenges us to establish thinking and explores whether or not mastery is needed to succeed. Instead, he sees variety and diversity being essential for success. His career, life, and interests are all proof of that. Well, Cliff, a pleasure having you on. I remember George Leonard. If I go back to those days, he wrote a book called Mastery, and it always fascinated me because George was a fascinating guy, and I did a 4-hour interview with him in his living room. He used to work for Look magazine. And mastery is an interesting topic, but I want to start off with, Malcolm Gladwell is pretty well known, writes a lot of books, sells a lot of books, and you cite right on the book jacket that this research for outliners, where you had to have 10,000 hours of whatever it is that you were trying to master, whether it's the flute, it's the piano, it's whatever it might be, or a particular skill, to be a success in an endeavor. You believe that this is not as important, and that I want to know what your philosophy is about mastering something, or as a state of being, as you call it, this master of none, because we've heard this Jack of all trades, master of none. It's been out there for a long time. Why do you believe that we should be kind of taking this route to have more fun and I want to call flexibility in our life?
Well, interesting that you do go to the book cover. A couple of things about the subtitle, how a jack of all trades can still rise to the top, still reach the top. That term, you said we've heard the term for a long time. That term does arise. The earliest reference to it is with a fellow by the name of Robert Greene, and his criticism of a peer of his, and I suspect most of the listeners are probably asking, who's Robert Greene? And in part, that's the point of the story. He did use that term, that a peer of his was a jack of all trades, but a master of none, going on 400 years ago. And so who was that? Well, his criticism was of William Shakespeare, and that William Shakespeare was a jack of all trades. And lo and behold, of course, centuries later, everyone knows who William Shakespeare is. Nobody knows who Robert Greene is, and in spite of Greene's criticism of Shakespeare. So I think the the in part, the title of the book, the two hang together, of course. The main title, Master of None, the subtitle, How Can a Jack of All Trades Can Still Reach the Top. In my life, this idea of variety and the Jack of all trades has really been a significant theme. And so in many ways, for my memoir here, the utilization of the subtitle is pretty critical. Without the subtitle, I think the title of the book, for me and for my course, my path, the book title doesn't make as much sense. In thinking about the Malcolm Gladwell theme of the idea that the 10,000 hours is critical, I don't have any doubt that in many pursuits, to the extent that the pursuit itself, the brain surgeon, maybe many other things, a professional musician or professional athlete. There probably are aspects of their pursuit in which the repetitive nature or the incredible depth that they would go to for preparation are really essential for them developing that specialty. I remember watching several years ago in an off season how one of the players for the New York Yankees, what he would do when they, quote, weren't playing, and the level of discipline that he would go through, Don Mattingly, in the off season, was quite extraordinary, including repetitive batting practice, through the winter. So here's a guy who no doubt spent that kind of time in repetitive preparation,
Right.
And it made a big difference for his career. So I think there's still the title of the book and the theme are not intended in any way to say that kind of preparation doesn't have its place. Rather, I think it is to say there is another way in life, and there are alternatives in life that don't involve that degree of intensity and singular focus. And
Yeah, and
I
think what you write about is curiosity, and I think when you look from a business context and you look at people like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and the people that have tremendous curiosity, Cliff, I think maybe that's the angle we're looking at. It's not a matter of mastering everything, but it's a matter of seizing opportunity as well. And you speak about that in the book. And, you tell a story about becoming the CEO of Sonic and that it wasn't planned. And I think that's also kind of a big theme of why you said master of none. Many of us have things happen in our life that are unplanned, and it takes us down a path, takes us down another journey. And this is your being thrust into the position, and in your estimation, maybe not being able to plan for that, but also maybe not being totally up to the skill level that you'd want to be when that happened. What, if you would, tell a little bit about the story, because you were kind of thrust into the position. You walked in a boardroom meeting and, the guy said, I'm on a plane to go to my next job. And, you ended up with this position, but you weren't expecting it. Right. And
That's
so
correct.
I think the important thing about that is that you have to become kind of a jack of all trades when something like that happens. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my preparation for that, as you know, my background did not include a business education. My undergraduate work was focused on history, and then I had a law degree. That in law school I did study several courses that were business law focused, and then went into a business practice. But that had more to do with business law and less to do with management or marketing or other underpinnings of business.
Right.
I joined Sonic as a general counsel, and in a way, if when I was appointed CEO, if there was anything that had occurred, it was a dozen years, 10 or 11 years of preparation, you might say.
Right.
And it was, and when I say preparation, it was learning a lot about that company, not some other company, and not necessarily about business generally. It was about learning what the history of this company was, and who its franchisees were, and what the politics of those relationships were, and how we made money, how we didn't make money, et cetera, what the peculiarities were about the company in growing and making money. So I had a long time training, even though it wasn't my view. All the years I was general counsel, I had no expectation, zero, that I would ever run the company. My boss, after I was with the company 8 years and we had taken the company public, I'd had a huge education, particularly in corporate finance, on the job training. And he asked me if I wanted to become CFO, Chief Financial Officer,
Right.
year after we went public. And my thought was, okay, I've been general counsel here for 8 years. Why not? I had a big education in corporate finance. It was pre-Sarbanes-Oxley and a lot of complexities that the law and the world had later. And so I agreed to do that. And it was good for me. It pulled me into the company in a different way than I would have otherwise in terms of understanding the particular aspects of the company, particularly reporting it to the world. But after a year of that, I was then approaching 40 years old, and I'd been with the company, 9 years, I guess, at that point. And I told my boss that I was going to leave, and my thought was, I only got one life. I want to see what other experiences might be. Mm-hmm. And not long, he was quiet about it for a while. And I gave him 6 months notice because I felt like he was going to have to really restructure some elements of the management team and processes. And after a short while, he came to me and said, well, why don't you just move to the chief operating officer role and stay here? And so my thought was, well, I was thinking about going out and doing something different. I could stay here and do something different. So what the heck? And
yeah,
so I took that on and had that job for a year and a half. When April 1995, he came into a board meeting and said, I'm leaving. And the board said, when? And he said, today.
Well, and look, when you look at it, Cliff, what you just said is you had been in all these positions and you'd been learning quite a bit about the company in these different positions in the operations of the company. So what better person even though maybe you didn't think you were prepared to actually step up and do that. And I'm sure that's what the board thought as well. Now, much of your book revolves around these rules of thumb. And I love the rules of thumb, so I want to get to those.
Okay.
And you mentioned that we seek stability and veer away from uncertainty, but that stability is a myth. This is rule number 1 for all my listeners. Your personal story kind of exemplifies some of the instabilities. Your family losing their home, your father losing his business in the 60s. You write about that. And I think all of our listeners out there can relate to uncertainty and loss at some point in their life. Something happened to them along the way. What do you believe people learn from adversity, and how does this better prepare us for being more flexible and for embracing being a jack of all trades?
Well, I think that to the extent that the adversity is not too shocking, to the system, adversity is something that does generally make us stronger and creates a stronger backbone in us and helps us approach ordinary challenges, but significant challenges prospectively with how we learn to deal with it in the first case. It also can be, depending on how we deal with this, and earlier in your life, something that's a significant development may appear to be a big problem, maybe even catastrophic. But as we go through life, we understand we have a different perspective about that, the significance of it, what it means for us. And so, in fact, I think for the person that absorbs this and absorbs it well and learns from these changes that were not of their own creation, I think what it can help a person do in the best circumstances, it helps them start seeing these things as opportunities rather than challenges. Right. And it means that they can embrace them in a positive way. In essence, though the manner in which it arose was not their own doing, it can in a way become their choice once they embrace it and move forward with it. And in a way, that's the most positive thing that can happen from that kind of reaction development to adversity, I think.
Yeah, and I think the most important key, and you bring it out, is not resisting, right? A lot of times these things happen to people, and we can spend our life telling ourselves a story about what happened to us and then reliving that story over and over and again. And, look,
Right.
my show is called Inside Personal Growth. The
Mm,
key here is not to keep living the old story, but to be able to
mm,
move beyond it and not resist it. And I think that's a
hmm.
key here. Your second rule is that your impact is greater when you are, and I'm going to underline this word, not in complete control. Now, that goes contrary to what a lot of people would think, but the reality is, I understand it quite clearly because this opens you up for more opportunity. Now, you mentioned that control is about trust or lack thereof. Okay. And that's true in a marriage. It's true in anything in life. It's true with your
Right.
kids. Okay.
Right.
You cite the late Tony Hesh, the founder of Zappos, which, by the way, we were just talking about in a travesty. He passed away in a home fire. Um, be yourself and use your best judgment. Tony was really known for giving his employees autonomy. I mean,
Right.
when you really look at it, that was all that Tony did, was like come to work, have fun, put pictures up all over the place, jump around, wear monkey suits, whatever you want to do. But it made it a fun place to work. So my
Right.
question is, what is it about providing autonomy to the employees that makes perfect sense in your estimation? The other thing I was going to cite is, a long time ago, Herb Kelleher, the CEO of Southwest Airlines, always used to say he'd run around with M&Ms and give them out to the people, and he'd give them hugs and kisses, and he had a great environment, and there was lots of kind of videos done about him, right? But
Yes.
the big key he did was autonomy. When
Yeah.
somebody came to the gate and the flight was canceled, you had the ability to give people a pass to go get a meal or to give them a dinner, but to use your judgment. Tell us why that worked at Sonic.
Yeah. Well, I think there are easily a couple of things that in the immediate situation and over time make a huge difference by giving subordinates autonomy and allowing them to really, in essence, what you're allowing them to do is grow and develop, which is the more long-term result. In the short term, it's very affirming to the individual, and it strikes me that they're far more likely to take charge of a situation. That may be obvious if you give them the opportunity to take charge, but when I say that, I really mean take ownership of problems, take ownership of challenges. And I'm confident we did this time and time again at Sonic over the years that I was the CEO. At times we did it formally, which I would have several examples. But on an ongoing basis, we did it informally in terms of individuals' autonomy over their area of responsibility. And since I left the company after it was acquired a couple of years ago, I've had individuals who've moved on to other circumstances tell me that it strikes them after their years at Sonic, it's just how much autonomy they did have, and they perhaps didn't appreciate at the time the degree that they enjoyed of autonomy at Sonic. In the immediate situation, I think you get an employee who does take ownership of a challenge and does not only, if it is in the nature of a problem, help solve it, but to the extent that it is an opportunity for the company, they will take ownership of it, as I say, and help it become something different for the company than they would if they felt like they didn't have that.
Right.
In the long run, I think what happens is you develop different people. You
Yeah,
develop
and
a different
I
culture.
also think, Cliff, like you do, I'm sure, that looks many companies, to me, there's a big difference between guidelines and rules. Okay.
Right.
I think it's okay to give a set of guidelines.
Right.
Guidelines to me say,
Right.
hey,
Right.
you have some freedom to move one way or the other. You have
Right.
autonomy. But when there's a rule, how many times have you, called up a company to get customer service and it goes, well, this is our rule. You've got to do
Yeah.
this way, right?
Right.
And
Right.
as the
Right.
customer, you're so pissed off
Yeah.
because you think the rule is silly. You look
Right.
at it and you go,
Right.
well, how did this get ingrained in people's minds because they think this is an important thing to do? And
Right.
I was going to cite an example, but I won't because I just went through it with a phone that I'm
Mm.
returning that
Yeah.
actually the whole back came off of, right? But
Mm.
the point is that is it a rule? Is it a guideline? Who has autonomy? Who can make a decision? All of that's important. And I think Tony embraced that. I
Yeah.
know you embraced it at Sonic. Now, your third rule is harmony. And you say
Yes.
harmony requires contrast and multiple voices.
Yes.
In the book, you reminisce about music from the 60s and 70s. It just proves our age. And you go on to state that in the music, as in music in life, the strength of harmony is never so apparent as when you see the weaknesses that occur when harmony breaks down. Obviously, in a band, a
Yep.
jazz band, it
Yep.
doesn't matter, a choir, when that happens, but also in business. How would you
Yep.
advise the listeners in creating more harmony in their business cultures? Because let me tell you, this is a big one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think the non-musical term that is at the base of the harmony being the result, the process in a group situation is ensuring a high degree of collaboration and engagement. The voices are heard. That one voice is not the dominant voice. And to go back to your point about the rules, all organizations have to have guidelines, and in other words, what are the guardrails? What are the parameters?
Mm-hmm.
That you're going to establish. But then folks have to be free, need to be free to operate within those and have creativity. But the group does have to come together towards common goals, et cetera. My context for this is running a franchise organization, and so the issue and why is that a big deal? Because these individual franchisees are owner operators of restaurants in our case,
Mm-hmm.
and they put millions of dollars up and at risk in their businesses, and they're not interested in doing that. And to be dictated to, particularly when they're, in their view, it's somebody knows less about their business than they do,
Yeah.
which is not necessarily true, but that is their perspective often. And so engaging them in the development of new technologies that are going to be utilized,
Right.
engaging them in the testing of new products, engaging them in the helping in the design and the implementation of new trade dress. What a restaurant's going to look like and how it may change consumers' perspective. These are collaborative processes that, from my standpoint, yield a better nature of engagement of the individuals, and they yield a better result, which all of the participants are more inclined to embrace.
Yeah, and
And
it really brings up this point, you know, when you're working in harmony, right, and you're working in balance. I'm sure, always pay. So it's like the feedback. So all these franchise owners, obviously, at Sonic, like all franchises, you have a forum of these people. You bring them in. You want to
yes,
get their ideas. You want to get their input,
right,
especially because they're entrepreneurs. They want to be heard.
yes,
And the most important thing you can do is listen to them because that creates the balance. If you
yes,
start creating rules for them that don't work because they weren't heard, you
yep,
guarantee yourself they're not going to follow your rules.
yep, yeah.
Okay.
It starts off with an unhealthy dynamic when you move
Yeah.
that
So
direction.
you
Yeah,
created that. I know you did. And, I think it's important for our listeners to know when they read through this book, Master of None, Jack of All Trades, all these things we're talking about, while business related, can be applied personally as well.
yes,
And so, rule number 4, say yes and then figure it out. Okay, well, a lot of my listeners have heard that. You mentioned that the human species is programmed to do rote activities and stay in routine autopilot. Couldn't agree with you more. You encourage the readers to break free and go beyond survival and certainty. What do we evolve into when we live our life free from the mental mindset of autopilot and certainty? I mean, I've read books on uncertainty. I know you've seen them. They're always fascinating, but we have this little trigger in our brain that says, I don't like that. Look, I've jumped out of planes. I've been in New Zealand. I've been in fly-by-wires. I've done all kinds of things that are
Mm,
scary
mm,
because I like them. I enjoy
right,
that. There's a lot of people that don't like or never would jump out of a plane in a parachute because they don't know about the uncertainty of landing. Okay.
right,
So
right.
what would you tell people about, hey, look, this is one of the main themes in your book. This is one of them. There are many. These are rules, but the reality is say yes and then figure it out. Okay. A lot of people would say, wait a second, I want to draw the diagram first before I actually say yes.
Right. Well, and different people's heads work differently. And
Yeah.
there are some people that are very structured. I'm married to one of those, very
Mm-hmm.
structured, and they like to do things in a plotting way, and they like to have some predictability about their next step. I think this is a corollary of the degree of curiosity the person has and how they
Mm-hmm.
exercise that curiosity. I mentioned that about being married to someone. I am of a contrasting style, and that is I'm more likely to say, okay, yeah, let's give that a shot and then figure it out. I think there are two things about that. One I talk about in the book, even from my own standpoint. Did I have a finance or accounting background? No. Did that keep me from being willing to become CFO? No. I had on-job training, and I had an apparatus around me, a public accounting firm working with us and so on. My reaction was, I'll figure this out,
You'll learn it.
and there's enough of an apparatus that I shouldn't really get into big trouble, and it may be a real upside, and then particularly with the COO job. I mean, that was a new experience altogether. But that was one too that I thought, well, how many times in my life, if I say no to this, how many times in my life will I have the opportunity to do something like this again?
Yeah.
And the answer is unknowable, except I've got a bird in the hand, and the other is totally unknowable. And so I took it, even though. I mean, believe me, when I was made COO and when I was made CEO, there were any number of people, in our business, in our system, who wondered what the board of directors had done, quote, appointing a lawyer, as the CEO. So I think both as it relates to your own career experience, this is a critical attitude. But it's
Well,
also
but
true
you
when
talk
you're.
about, pardon me for interrupting, but
It's all
you
right.
talk about labels in your book.
Yeah.
How we label people. You might be by training a lawyer. I have a brother
Right.
he's the top partner at Cooley Godward. Okay. But does that mean that that's all he is?
Right.
No. The guy's a
Right.
surfer. He rides a motorcycle. He's a
Mm,
risk taker. He's a whatever. You got to see behind the curtain. And as I say, labels are only meant because in a hierarchy of structure, there's a label. You're still Clifford Hudson. You're still curious, and that's who you are, and you're still a risk taker. And all
right.
you're really trying to say here is if you say no to somebody that comes by and is asking you to say yes, you're
Yeah.
going to give up a lot of opportunity. And Cliff, you speak about Jim Barnett here,
Yeah.
Barrett
Barrett. Yes.
being
Yeah.
one of the
Barrett.
most important individuals that
Right.
changed your life for the better.
Right.
Okay.
Unintended.
Yeah.
But
What Jim did goes along with the rule of thumb number 5, which is seize opportunity created by others, which we were just talking about.
right.
Jim was the one that gave you this opportunity. You might not have
Created
seen it
it.
at the point and
Yeah.
created it.
Right.
Can you
Yeah.
tell
Yeah.
our listeners about Jim and the opportunity created in your life?
Yeah. So Jim Barrett was in the book, I refer to him as a wily coyote. He was an
Yeah.
interesting fella. I don't know what his academic background was, except that he also studied law. And by the time I met him, was not practicing law and hadn't in years. But he was quite a character. When by the time I started dealing with him, he was a Sonic franchisee and a stockholder of our company. He had become a stockholder of our company years before, and in fact years before was a member of our board of directors, a significant stockholder, and a franchisee. And so he was quite wrapped up with our brand. Now, by the time I started dealing with him, though, from a business standpoint, at Sonic, he was no longer a member of our board of directors and no longer an officer of the company.
Hmm.
and instead he was still a stockholder, and he was and a significant franchisee. But he was aggravated having it pushed out, and he didn't like the direction the company was going.
Hmm.
So how he came into the story here, and he came into affecting my path so ultimately positively, was I was about a year with the company. He asked to meet with the CEO and me. He was going to bring his lawyer to the meeting. We didn't know the purpose of the meeting, but in the meeting, he told my boss, the CEO, it's my plan to get control of a majority of the stock of the company, and then buy the entire company. And I'm going to fire you guys and all the senior management. I'm going to cut the overhead way back and take control and direction of the brand for the system. This was a total shock to us and to our founder, who was still the largest stockholder. So the consequence of what happened here, while initially it was one of, we're operating in the middle of this oil bust. I'd sure hate to lose my job.
Yeah.
In fact, what it became was the founder going to his friends, fellow stockholders, and getting options on 51% of the stock to head off Barrett's attempt. But the jewel for us, meaning management and those who came to own the company, the jewel for us was, for any number of reasons, the founder, when he got that 51%, he actually turned to the CEO and said, I will give you the opportunity to buy this for fair market value. And I think he did that to kind of protect himself for claims by other stockholders that he had just kind of stolen a good deal from them with Jim Barrett was going to provide. The effect of this was, one, it stopped Barrett. That was the most immediate effect, and that was the intended effect. But the second effect was it suddenly put the option to buy the company in the CEO's lap. And in fact, though none of us had any money, we went out and put together a deal to buy the company, which we did. Took us a year to get that whole thing done. But with few assets at all, individual assets, we did a leveraged buyout using the company's assets to buy the company. And this put the company on a different path. And clearly, you can see in retrospect, put me on a different path as well.
Yeah, it was again, being a jack of all trades gives you an opportunity to step in and do certain things and have the flexibility and be able to react, or I should say, be able to act, not react in a positive way to turn something that could have been extremely negative into something very positive.
Yes.
And I think that Jim was one of those people, and you never know sometimes in your life when people put those things out there, what's really intended for it, what it's intended to do. And in your case, you guys made lemonade out of lemons, right?
Yes, well,
so
that's a good statement.
That was good. Now I'm going to skip a few of your rules if you don't mind, but for my listeners, this book has some great rules in it, but we're going to move to a rule number 8, which is a win-win approach is the only way to sustain growth. What advice would you give our listeners about creating this win-win approach in life as well as in business so that they can grow and prosper?
Yeah. Well, it strikes me that it's hard to imagine a business. I mean, if you've got customers, which if we have business, we all got customers,
Right.
You have to be thinking about how to offer the product or the service that you're offering in such a way that it can enhance your customers' business as well. And if you're not thinking that way, you're probably going to have a different outcome in the success of your own operation. But if you are thinking that way, clearly you should be communicating that way. I'm saying that generally. I will say from my standpoint, my business career, 23 years as CEO of running a restaurant franchise system.
Right.
And so my view became, in my continuous communication to our franchise operators was, in the long run, I will only win if you win. And so my job is to make the brand stronger and make your stores, your individual representation of that brand stronger, which was number one measurement of that was sales and profitability.
Right.
There were other measurements as well, but that was the number one measurement. And so we had a goal every year. You could say as a corporation, weren't we all focused on corporate profitability? We had a goal every year, which we published for our operators. We will work to grow the average store owned by a franchisee. We will grow the average store's profitability in this way by this amount. So it was continuously a win-win approach to the business. And this had the effect of one, helping keep people on board and aligned with what we're doing, but it also gave us the authority when someone, back to your concept about the guardrails, the parameters you manage within, it also gave us authority, legitimized the process when people painted out or went outside the lines and really went beyond the system, because we took that win-win approach. And our perspective was the people that went outside that were actually going to put that win-win at risk. I think in the long run that life is lived best that way. I think when we watch, one of the problems that we get so frustrated about watching Washington, D.C. and the leadership there is that I think a person that, I believe this to be the case, a person that goes in and espouses a win-win approach and how can you get what you need and I'll get what I need, today is almost laughed at, and it's difficult for them to sustain a leadership position, publicly espousing that or even privately working that direction.
Well, I think everybody, I'm not going to say everybody, but I think many of my listeners would agree that the whole political system, and I know it sounds trite, but it is broken. How can you spend millions and millions of dollars campaigning for a position and taking additional amounts of money everywhere? That, in my estimation, this is my own political commentary, needs to change because that in itself sets up not so much collaboration, but conflict. And I think when you look at the triple win, which is people, planets, and profit, then we look at a different situation altogether as well. And I think when you start to take a consciousness view of the fact that we need to really shift what's going on in this world, we do need to look at everything in context with the three people, planets, and profit kind of situation.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, because it's got to be that, and that's where we're seeing everything head, fortunately. Now, we're going to wrap up the interview kind of with this last question, Cliff, and I always do this at the end because I think it's an opportunity for the authors to just kind of think about the book and then say, okay, if I was reading this book and I had the quote Cliff Notes version, meaning Cliff's Notes, you even have notes at your website. What three things would you want to leave our listeners with, that advice you'd want them to take away that maybe is actionable, maybe is not actionable, but I always love to give them three tidbits that are actionable. Maybe it's a couple of your rules, whatever.
Right. So I would say two or three things, and they're life stories, but maybe they're also work and business stories. One is, we always hear the keep your nose to the grindstone sort of thing, but I think there's a difference between keeping your head down in that circumstance versus keeping your head up. And when your head's up, you're going to see opportunities that come along, and it doesn't mean you don't have to work hard. It doesn't mean you don't have to produce on the more narrow expectations your employer might have, but keep your head up, because you'll see more of what's going on. You'll learn more broadly, and over time, the outcome will be positive for you. So that's one element. Another element is in the vein of curiosity. Seek variety, because I think
be curious.
Be curious. Yeah. Yes, be curious.
Yeah.
Because you may have the view that, gee, my boss, their expectations, I got to work more hours, but there quickly is a diminishing return there. I found, as a younger person, I eventually, stopped doing this when we had our second child, but I was amazed going to my church choir on a Thursday evening and singing practice for 2 hours. What a head clearing experience that was. And I could have been working that evening, producing another document or whatever. But in fact, my productivity would increase by and where'd we freeze up?
Yeah, no, it goes up.
Oh, I
Your
see. I thought, oh, it goes.
productivity goes
Everything goes.
up.
I'm sorry. I
The
thought you said
more
it
time
flows
you
up.
spend doing activities
Yes.
such as yoga,
Yes.
exercise, biking,
Yes.
singing, whatever,
Yes.
it's very proven that the mind then has the ability to
Yes.
come back in a new, different way
Yes.
and re-trigger. Yeah,
So pursuing variety,
yeah,
and it's not variety for variety's sake. It is, what are the things you're curious about in life, what clicks for you, and
yeah,
follow those. And
yeah.
just because it's not income producing doesn't mean anything. If it clicks for you, go for it.
Right.
So I would say those two things are very kind of general life story elements. And then the other thing I would say for a particular young person starting their career, um, the whole concept of master of none, jack of all trades, is not intended to say don't work hard. In fact, I think you do have to apply yourself quite seriously on a sustained
Right.
basis. And if you're going to achieve anything, you're largely going to get out of it what you put into it. And so that is part of the life equation. And
Yeah.
it would be unfortunate for a person young earlier in their career to misinterpret the theme of the book to mean you don't have to work hard. The fact is, I think if you're going to achieve much, you do have to work hard. But I think doing it in a creative way, open to change, open to new opportunities, keeping your head up, embracing um, experiences on a broader basis will make you a richer person. It will also make you a more profitable business operator if that's what you're doing with your life.
Well, Cliff, it's been a pleasure having you on. And I think one of what you're really saying is like the people that look at the philosophy of Stoicism, what's in your control and what's out of your control. And the
Mm,
reality is, we don't control everything that happens in our life. As a matter of fact, there's a lot that is not in control, but there is
mm,
much that is in control. And when we take a look at that, we have an opportunity, as you said, when you're curious, to really seize those opportunities. And those are the things that are in control. You know, they come our way. Hey, look, we can seize that opportunity. But like you said, say yes, then figure it out. I love that one.
right.
That's a great rule of thumb. For all
Yeah.
my listeners, pick up a copy of this book. We're going to have a link to it on Amazon, called Master of None. We've been on with Cliff Hudson speaking about this book and his rules of thumb. It's worth getting it just for the rules of thumb. You can also go to his website at cliffordhudson.com. There you can download a free chapter if you need to read that ahead of time. He's got a podcast as well. You can listen to his podcast. Cliff, pleasure having you on Insight Personal Growth, spending a few minutes with my listeners talking about your new book. Love it, and I love the rules. Thank you so much.
Greg, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and I appreciate the opportunity as well. Thank
All right.
you.
You take care.
Okay.